Now, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage one of my favorite professors. I've been following Josemaria Siota's work for many years. He's been a sort of inspiration for me and personally in how we think about global corporate venturing and the impact that we could do around the world by understanding how corporations are doing a better job. I think the work that he and his colleagues have been doing, has been really sort of groundbreaking in terms of bringing together not just corporate venture capital, but open innovation and corporate venturing. And IESE is well regarded as probably one of the #1 business school in Europe at the moment. So please welcome to the stage Josemaria, who will talk about tackling the EU Valley of Death, corporate venturing in deep tech. Come on up.
1, 2, 3, 4. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very welcome, ladies and gentlemen. While the presentation is getting on, I have to say it's an honor to be with this great audience. Thank you very much, James, for the invitation. I would like to start with a question. Can elephants and rabbits work together? Stay with me for the next 15 minutes to understand what are the hidden opportunities behind that question. And I would like to start with an example. And please don't get sick with the driving. Here, what we can see is a car driving through the streets of one of the cities in China. This is one example of what we are going to discuss today, where you have Pony AI, and a startup in AI, working in artificial intelligence, working with Toyota to produce self-autonomous driving. This is already going. And this is just what we are going to talk today on corporate venturing in deep tech. But what's corporate venturing? And we have seen a lot of discussions between yesterday and today. We define corporate venturing not only as corporate venture capital, but in a broader spectrum. So any collaboration between established companies and innovative startups, as we have recently published at Harvard Business Review and MIT Sloan. As you can see, it's within the framework of open innovation, and there are plenty of mechanisms. For instance, yesterday morning, we have heard from Gregor Jimmy about the venture client model, where BMW Garage was the first client of startups. You are experts in corporate venture capital, but there are plenty of other mechanisms, such as venture builders, when you ask to a third party to create a startup, hackathons, scouting missions, and more. This is a phenomenon that is growing at the speed. As yesterday, in one of the first speakers, Kaloyan was presenting the data, we have seen a tremendous increase since 2016, for instance, in one of the mechanisms, the corporate venture capital, where the volume and the transactions has increased by 4 and by 2. So the first message, this is growing, and there are plenty of available mechanisms. The second message, deep tech. And we have seen, and we have heard from Maiha, different panel discussions. We will hear another one later on, but what's deep tech? Are all those emerging technologies coming from research institutions that can have a huge positive impact in society. Right now, we categorize those into these 7 groups. And we have many examples. For instance, in advanced materials, what Porsche is doing right now with batteries, what Amazon is doing with robotics in warehouses, what BBVA, the bank, is doing in blockchain, or what Samsung, and we'll see later in the next panel discussion, what is doing, for instance, with IonQ, the startup. Now, there is a huge hidden opportunity here. First data. Do you know that 21% of the best research centers in terms of publications in worldwide are in Europe, according to Shimago Institution's ranking? However, if you go to the European Patent Office, where there are more than 3 million patents right now, 95% of those are dormant, inactive, under use, according to our recent study with the European Commission. Yet the remaining 5% impacts in the 40% of the GDP of Europe. 40%. Do you imagine for a second to activate just an additional 5%, the huge impact that we can generate? When we were with the European Commission at the Joint Research Center analyzing what were the triggers or the reasons of this, we found different reasons, but a lack of funding for proof of concept for deep tech entrepreneurs. But let me explain. Imagine that you are an investor, actually you are, and you have two entrepreneurs. And one of the things that we have seen in Europe so far is when I want to invest in a deep tech entrepreneur, time horizons are longer. We move from 7 to 15 years, maybe. More complexity on their technologies, more capital. And as Nicholas was saying yesterday, we have to be patient and impatient. But the challenge is that investors, many times we are quite impatient. And what is happening with that is what we are going to see in this chart. In the x-axis, what you have is the maturity stages of companies. In the y-axis, the vertical axis, are the ticket size. And the red line is the available capital in Europe coming from different institutions, such as the European Investment Bank. Now, I want to focus here. This is what we call the so-called European Valley of Death, which has been the elephant in the room at the European Commission for more than 25 years. Now, on the one hand, we have more and more funding coming from corporate venturing. On the other hand, we have a lack of funding for proof of concept for deep tech entrepreneurs. Now, what if we connect the dots? There are plenty of opportunities. And for that, what we were trying, for instance, is to understand better this phenomenon of corporate venturing in deep tech. For that, we were trying to analyze, okay, imagine that I am in a corporation and tomorrow at 9 a.m., I want to work with a deep tech entrepreneur. What are going to be the biggest challenges I'm going to face? For that, we were doing this analysis, among many others. So we were to the East and Southeast Asia. We were interviewing more than 100 corporations there. And here what you can see are, in each country, out of the biggest 20 corporations, how many of those are doing corporate venturing right now with any of the mechanisms? In the next panel, we will hear Samsung, but also we have heard during these days the case of Hyundai, Toyota, and many others. They are segmented by annual revenue. Now, what you can see is are different adoption rates, so percentage of corporations working with entrepreneurs by region. On average, there is a 55%, but then you go to Japan, where there is a 95%. But what I want to focus on is out of those corporations, we see a growth on adoption of corporate venturing, but also on their portfolios on deep tech. Moreover, if we analyze the portfolios, you will see that more than 70% of those portfolios have at least 25% of the startups on deep tech. Moreover, when we were interviewing those companies, they mentioned that more than 70% of those are going to increase the deep tech weight of their startups in the next 5 years. Now, once we have that sample, what do you think is going to happen in the next slide? Not in this one, but in the next one. When we identify what are the toughest challenges for corporations working with deep tech entrepreneurs, what do you think? These were the results. Number one, who has to do the technology evaluation? Is the R&D department? Is the corporate venturing department? The R&D department maybe is going to be biased toward internal babies, towards internal developments. Short-term view. So I am the corporate venturing team. I want to invest in a startup, but maybe the business unit wants short-term results or quarter results. Internal KPIs, regulation, regional fragmentation, and more. Moreover, I also bring more bad news, by the way. 70% on corporate venturing collaborations fail, precisely 69.4%. However, what we have tried to do for the last decade is to interview more than 500 chief innovation officers to understand what the 30 remaining % is doing differently. And there are many questions behind that we have tried to tackle. For instance, what's the best mechanism to work with a startup? Is the CVC, is the venture client, is the corporate incubator? How to measure success? How to measure strategic value? What's the right autonomy for a corporate venturing team? What's the right profiles? How do you incentivize the director of a corporate venture capital, for instance, when you have competitors on terms of hiring from the VC industry, and much more? I'm not going to tackle 10 years of research in 5 minutes, but I'm going to just answer one of the questions, or to shed light on one opportunity that I foresee for all of us, for this amazing community for the next 5 to 10 years. This concept is called corporate venturing squads. Corporate venturing squads. And what's that? What we have experienced after Corona has been an increase on volatility on different indexes, such as the CVOE, an increase of volatility between 2 to 6 times. And that has impact in different ways in terms of the corporate venturing industry. Number one, in some cases, there has been cost cutting on budgets. Second, sometimes it's more challenging right now to anticipate deal flow. So how do you anticipate deal flow before competitors? How do you identify those opportunities before competitors? And third, as we have seen in the initial discussions, this room, maybe 15 years ago, we were less people. But now there are a lot of corporations trying to seduce those top-tier entrepreneurs. What makes you unique? What's your uniqueness on your value proposition to seduce the top-tier entrepreneurs? Do you imagine a mechanism to tackle these 3 challenges? For that, corporate venture squads, we define it as those small groups, and we're analyzing what's the right number, the structure, and more, but usually between 4 to 6 corporations working together to innovate with the startups, either in different sectors to reduce friction, or in the same sector but in different parts of the value chain. Now, what are the consequences? Number one, you can reduce the cost of innovation. Imagine that you want to do a proof of concept, and you are with other 4 colleagues. Maybe you can reduce by 80% the cost of the proof of concept, sharing the cost with the others. Second, before maybe you have 10 scouters. Now you have 10 plus 10 plus 10, you have multiplied by 5 your scouting capabilities. And maybe in technologies and sectors that you didn't have access before. And the third one, now imagine that you are an entrepreneur. And we have a room here, a table here with 1 corporation, and maybe another one there with 5. What the entrepreneur prefers? Here, distribution channel in 20 countries, there in 100. Here, 1 communication channel, there 5. Here, technical expertise in 1 sector, there 5. So you are improving and strengthening the value proposition to the entrepreneur. And we have seen more and more cases of this happening. For instance, if you go to the south, to the north of Europe, you have this case of Mobility X, where Volvo, Ericsson, and a few others, in the case of the automobile sector, are joining forces across the value chain to do this squad. Now, in the last 30 seconds that are remaining, what are the main conclusions of today? Number one, when you consider your architecture of corporate venturing, consider all your corporate venturing mechanisms. This is not only corporate venture capital. Number two, deep tech has a huge potential. However, you need the right mechanisms to be ready for that longer time horizon and risk. Third, this deep tech and corporate venturing can be the 1 + 1 3 that we are looking for to tackle the European Valley of Death. 4, deep tech has different mechanisms, but be careful with those internal biases. And 5, and the last one, there are plenty of opportunities on corporate venturing squads. And this is the right platform maybe to join forces together. If you want to learn more, here you have in English and Chinese the latest reports on these 2 topics. I hope the discussion has been helpful. Looking forward to learn from all of you, and thank you very much.